It's great to have you three on stage. We actually have a studio, a public broadcaster, and a content maker, content creator. You've seen the results from the audience about what is disrupting this industry, the content making. Well, what, from your perspective, and again, you are representing, you're embodying a very single part of this ecosystem when it comes to content creating. What is the most disruptive from your perspective? We'll start with you, Eric, as a broadcaster. How will you be disrupted?
Everything. Everything is on the same time. It's amazing. It's a good time to be in this industry, I believe. On my side, I would say we are just at the beginning of the hyper offer of content, and the fact that there is an amazing amount and growing exponentially of content is one of the big threats for TV, because you get the risk of being dissolved in another world called video. And if TV is dissolved in another world, a growing world, which is good because the market is growing, TV might be lost somewhere as a small planet of a growing, big, huge, new market. In the same time, you have this growing profusion of content, and you have, because of technology, you are moving from mass media to precision media, because you can target people. So you have these two forces, and therefore I think we have a challenge. Maybe I call it discoverability. Is it English? I don't know. The problem is to remain relevant for the audience at the right time, on the right device, to the right person. So we have to work to remain relevant I think on three different levels of recommendation. The first one is the one we know very well, is the editorial recommendation. This is a job of editors. We know what is good, or we think we know, by the way, what is good for the audience. So we are proposing some content, shows, sports, news, drama. The second recommendation, new recommendation engine, is a social recommendation through social networks. And you know that the recommendation from a friend is much more efficient or relevant than the recommendation of a newspaper or critics. And the third one is coming from the newcomer, is the algorithmic recommendation, the machine, through the machine. And you see how Netflix and Amazon are working on it. So we have to work on these three pillars. And I think every big broadcaster is now trying to get the best of these three pillars, and it's not easy.
And we'll come back to that in a few seconds. Of course, now, I mean, it's not a question. You have to be an at-a-what broadcaster. I mean, content needs to be actually seen from every single device. Let me turn to the studio guy. Post-production and production Senior Vice President at Sony Picture Entertainment. What is going to change your job forever?
Oh, what? There are lots of things that keep me busy. You know, it's interesting that globalization...
Could you please just raise up your mic so that I can hear you well and clear?
Can you hear me now? It's interesting that globalization and I think it was democratization of content is one of the key disruptors that the audience feels is important, because it's something that at the studio we are very cognizant of. It's something that we plan for in a lot of our product. And it's something that we've had to change our pipelines and how we actually make content to get it ready for a global market. And you know, the interesting thing is that UHD, Ultra HD, has actually led to innovations in how we actually create our masters and get them ready for the market. And it's kind of, that has already been a disruptive technology for us. We had to kind of throw away the business model that we had previously in how we would assemble content, the various languages that would go into it, and how we would actually distribute those pieces of content around the world to actually have it localized for particular territories. So I think that's actually a very good example, even though we're probably a little bit ahead of maybe some of the other studios and where we're at with our globalization of our content, but that's absolutely a big disruptor.
Simon, you're at one, I mean, actually, you're the beginning of this ecosystem. You're the content creator. When you hear broadcasters and studios talking about what is going to disrupt their jobs, what do you think? I mean, basically, you're the guy who embrace content is king.
Well, yeah, I liked what was it called, Dorsha from Sky yesterday's, the quote from him that if content is the tennis ball, then technology is the top spin we put on the ball just to get a little bit more bounce and a little bit more velocity. Mm-hmm. But I think that's I think that all this technology change for me is signaling that we can approach a shift in how we actually tell stories. If we're looking at, I mean, most of the stories for a couple hundred years now, more, have been going on along the hero's journey principles. You know, protagonist faces obstacles and challenges and overcomes them and comes out as a better person at the other end. Whereas with technology now, when I can be in contact with anyone, anywhere, around any subject, immediately, all around the world, and feel part of something bigger, as we see in fan fiction, etc., we're moving from a hero's journey into something that could be more described as a collective journey, where we as a collective, we take the risks, we face the challenges, we reap the benefits. We're all unique individuals within this community or within this collective, but the total of the collective is more than the sum of its parts. And I think this is a shift in mentality for creators that we need to take into consideration and look at in the future.
Just for my understanding, there's also a dilemma when it comes to innovation. It's called maybe the innovation illusion. Can you recall one innovation that was supposed to strike your business forever and that failed? And you know, where you had that day where your boss told you will have to go on this very innovation, we have to focus on this. And at the end of the day, it never happened.
Well, just an example. I was just counting the ones. There was quite a few. Back in the days, Finland, where I come from, was heavily invested in multimedia home platform as the interactive technology for set-top boxes, red button interactivity, and they put a lot of money into grants for production companies to create content around this. So we took the money, as you do, created a couple of quiz shows, and then quickly realized that when we went into fiction and educational stuff and stuff like that, it was very cumbersome and didn't further the narrative in any which way. And when we, a couple of weeks later, saw a survey and saw that Finland had a sum total of 12 connected MHP boxes, we were like, okay, let's... So we took the grant money, as you do, and then we quickly moved into cross-media with online and mobile for interactivity, and we haven't looked back since. And they discontinued the MHP service in Finland in 2007.
Great example, Bill.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Lots of technologies that went by the wayside. You know, I think one of the more recent ones, you know, that would be held up as an example is 3D. 3D, you know, still has a place, but certainly is not the game changer that I think everyone hoped and expected it to be. But I think that's where Ultra HD is actually taking over, and one of the biggest challenges of 3D was having to wear glasses and, you know, shared viewing environments where, you know, it became a cumbersome process to actually get a good experience in the home. And, you know, this is where VR actually might be able to take the place of that, because it's a very directed, focused experience, even though it's a very isolating experience. But 3D is just something that we do now, but it's certainly not something that, you know, we think is changing. It's in TVs, it's available, but certainly not the thing that, you know, is going to change the way that we view content.
Eric, the future media head of France Télévisions. Again, did you embrace at France Télévisions, or maybe at another broadcaster you work for, one innovation that totally failed?
it's difficult to say. I mentioned, you mentioned 3D. Obviously, 3D was a way we were looking at a couple of years ago, but maybe I would say maybe in a provocative way, the second screen experience, because we did realize that maybe the second screen is a TV and the first screen is a phone. So, wow, it changed everything, and so we have to reconfigure how we deal with the screen. So, yes, the second screen experience has been a bit faded.
So let's say that we are all beta testing the way to produce better content at a digital age. Would you agree by saying that we've been so focused on technological innovation in the past years when it comes to digital content and to TV content anyway, that now we are getting to a new era, an era called experience? I mean, every single one here at MIPTV wants to make experience live throughout their audiences, fans, users, whatever we are in the same day. Tell me a little bit more about this experience. How do you totally redefine the way to produce content in that area, Eric?
You're right. I think we are moving from a program-centric industry to an audience-centric industry. We are moving from a publication web to an experiential web, especially with VR, AR coming. It will be amazing to see how we react, and by the way, how we will get rid of this, because with AR you will get rid of smartphone in a couple of years maybe.
Well, you can use a smartphone on cardboard to have a VR experience. So
no, but I mean with AR you don't need a smartphone anymore, and the superposition of this new mixed reality, or the fact that you will have holograms, that this will be the main entrance to the digital world, and the smartphone will disappear then. To take care of this audience-centric, for example, we had a very simple, not only an experiment, we launched an app last year called Zoom, France TV Zoom. It's an application which is linked to the time you dispose, the time you have. If you have only 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 15 minutes, you will get a program from our different genres, linked to your history, linked to your social network, and linked to your previous behavior on the smartphone. So this is again a mix of editorial work and algorithmic work. This is this kind of experience we have launched last year. It's just an experiment. And we are learning from it.
Again, beta testing is the best process nowadays to try to see how to engage audiences and produce better content. Simon, what about you? How do you make experience happen?
Well, for instance, VR is what I think is going to be an experience medium, not so much a narrative medium. That's the feeling I have so far, even though VR is searching for the true language of virtual reality. But I think when creating experiences, we need to know what kind of experience to create. So I think what I see when I look at all the things that Paul showed is that there's an increasing need for us to listen to the audience a lot more. I mean, there are people and companies who do it beautifully, but we all would need to do it quite a lot. It's like when you have children. Anyone who has children have been in the situation when you're in a hurry somewhere and you need to get them to do something quickly and they refuse, so you talk to them. And by talk to them, I mean you shout at them and threaten them with horrible things. And then they do something, and then they'll do it, but then you feel horrible and they feel sad and everything's bad. If you would listen to them and if you would put yourself in their shoes and see what their situation is, you would have a much better strategy for making them do what you want to. Now it's the same thing with the audience. They're not our kids, but hopefully not. Or perhaps, but at least you can, by listening to them, you can achieve even better results. I mean, because you want them to take part of your content. So if you don't listen to them, they won't listen to you, and you'll be sad, and they won't care, and yeah.
But apart from social media, where do this feedback come from?
Social media.
Apart from social media, where do you grab this feedback to learn from audiences?
I have the luxury of actually being connected to a user experience and user-centered design laboratorium. So we have quite extensive research possibilities. That's just my lucky side of the fence, basically.
Let's have Bill on this question of experience, and then we'll tackle another question, which is monetization.
Well, I think that we're already in the experience business. I think that the narratives that we do create are experiences that we want our viewers to engage in. And there are stories that are told, and then there are stories that are experienced. And the different technologies that we have now, UHD, HDR, high dynamic range for those that don't know HDR, and some of these up and coming technologies like AR and VR, as well as high frame rate. That'll be another key technology to make something more experiential. And so I think that the stories that are being told in HDR are experiential, but they're experiential to a certain level. VR will take it to that next level. Hopefully we figure out how to actually tell narrative stories in VR in a way that's compelling and not distracting.
So now time is money, and innovation is also money. Audiences means money. What about monetization? How do you make money from all those innovation? Ho, no one wants to answer.
I can go. From our point of view, so we're a production and innovation company, and lately we've been doing a lot of corporate storytelling. And what I'm seeing is that, as I've read in a couple of articles as well, the great merchants of tomorrow will also, by necessity, be great storytellers. They won't necessarily be the best manufacturers of the certain goods they are trying to hand out, but they will be the ones who know how to tell the story of themselves, their brand and their products, have them reach an audience, engage them and resonate with them, and those will be considered the great merchants of tomorrow. And this trend is something that I'm seeing for my part being quite beneficial to our future business plans.
It's a bit difficult. As a public service, the business model is a bit, of course, different. But I'd like to mention that that TV is one of the very few sectors where innovation is coming from the public service. Look at the 4K, look at HD, HDR. All these formats are coming from the public service because we have a small margin of experimentation, R&D possibilities. But there are two aspects I'd like to very quickly to mention on the business model. One is the possible, or what we are seeing today is a big rejection by the public of advertising. And this is a huge trend. Now that the public has taken control of its experience through the digital and through the possibility of not only zapping advertising, but just blocking advertising. This is a huge problem, and the social contract between the editors and the public on advertising is a huge problem ahead of us. And we are beginning to hear from the US that advertising is a complicated model to follow now. The second thing is maybe, and it's a possibility, are we going to see a kind of a yield management price formation in real time for content? Like you get a price for a ticket on an airline or a train. You can get a special price for some VR content, some AR content in the future. We don't know, but it's also a possibility. I don't know. We'll see.
Bill.
Well, obviously, we want to sell our stories, so
Sure.
that's the prime motivation. We do tell stories in order to be able to monetize those. So, I think that the goal is to make compelling content, to continually drive and use technology not for technology's sake, but to actually use technology to make storytelling more cost effective, to actually use technology to tell stories we haven't been able to tell before. And so the innovations that we're bringing aren't necessarily a costly innovation. It may be driving costs down so that we can make make more cost-effective content. But certainly the stories at the end of the day, there has to be compelling stories if people are going to pay for it.
Now, there was another interesting point in Paul's presentation. It's about platforms. And let's tackle a question about platform wars. Are we all becoming platforms today? I mean, do we, as content providers, need to be online as platforms for everyone, every single audience to be seen and to be bought, actually, at the same time in terms of content? Eric, I know that your new president, Delphine Ernotte, at the very beginning of her presidency, had this amazing quote: "My competitors are not TF1 or Canal Plus anymore, they're Netflix, they're Google." So who is the enemy at France Télévisions?
No, we don't have enemy. We may have frenemies, which is more current, as everyone knows now. We have to deal with this new, very, very quickly changing situation where you have on the same side, the same people. They are friends because we are making business with them, with the Netflix and the YouTube and Facebook, and on the same side they are fighting. They are fighting for the eyeballs. They are fighting for the attention of the people. When you mention 8 billion videos every day on Snapchat, it's the same amount on Facebook, it's the same amount on the big platforms. So we are fighting for money, for advertising. We are fighting for attention. So no, it's not easy. And she's right. I mean, the so-called Uberization is always the same. The competitor is not coming from your traditional sector. It's coming from outside, and it's trying to crush you.
But actually, the frenemy quote is a good one, because you, as a public broadcaster, you need to be at Taiwan, basically. You need to be available anywhere, anytime, and on any single device. So how do you make that magic happen?
No, we do already. It's already...
good for you.
No. We call it the hyper distribution. We are a broadcaster. This is meaning you need to cast broadly. And therefore, we cast on every single platform, device, application. It costs a lot, but we need to be where the people are living. And the people today are the young people. They are living on the internet. They are living on application. They are living on social network and more on messengers. I mean,
instant messaging
application. Therefore, we need to be there, of course. And as a public service, that's our mission.
Being available anywhere, it's also a question for you guys, because actually it totally changed the process in which you are going to create a content, in which you're going to think about it, in which you're going to engage the audience and the proper audience on the proper device. So, again, simple question: how do you make this magic happen?
Well, I think one thing that's been becoming more and more apparent in not even in recent times, but over the last 5 years, that any development process needs to start with the end user. Who is it you are trying to reach? And like back in the days, you could come up with a good television show idea and pitch it to the broadcaster and get it on air or not. But nowadays, I think the development process itself needs to start with knowing who you want to reach, where they are, do a proper research of that segment of the audience, and take it from there.
Bill?
For us, it's more about partnerships, right? Actually licensing deals to actually get our content out there. So there are no enemies in that in that scenario, right? There's no competition. There's no competition in that scenario where we want everyone to distribute our content. So, it's just making it available at the right terms so that it can get to their particular segment.
It's a frenemies competition.
Yeah.
I get that. Okay, let's see on the mobile app, actually, if you do have some question, I'll just have to use my device for that and just log on the application. Actually, we do have some question. There is a question. You mentioned Snapchat, Eric, a while ago, and there was a question. How must be the media strategy by Snapchat? Sorry, again? How must be the media strategy by Snapchat? I would rephrase that, and let's turn into do you target instant messaging such as Snapchat, and
No,
how do you actually enter those kind of applications where content goes viral a second away?
Yeah, remember that Snapchat is a narrowcasting application, which is not so easy to understand for guys old like me. But we are working. We will work. We have obviously, like everyone, contact with Snapchat, and we will see what we can do. They are not yet in France, but they are having contact. I believe they will have a first row of partnership during the first half of the year in France. We will see. We are trying, for example, Facebook instant articles. It's an experiment as well. We will see how it works. We are on Google AMP accelerated mobile pages from Google, trying to see, does it improve the experience of the audience? Does it make it easier for the user at the end to get in touch with our content, with our different content? And of course, the big elephant in the room is the fact that our audience is getting older and older, and the other big initiative we are trying to work on is to try to work on a news channel for a younger audience, and to make a new kind of format for on mobile, specifically on mobile for this audience. We don't want to be in the end of life business.
Absolutely. Well, you should. And actually, the question, if you're mentioning or if you're bringing to the conversation the question of France Info, which is supposed to be the new name of the news network of France Télévisions, how did you think about it? Because first, the main idea was to think about, again, how to consume news on smart devices and on mobile devices first, then just thinking about bringing up a new network on television. Is this now the first question you ask yourself as a broadcaster? How to foresee that consumption and content on second screens before even trying to think about how to create it on TV?
Of course, we will have to, and we do it already on France TV Info. France TV Info has been built on for mobile, including social networks, including Twitter for the first time in Europe. And we will work with public broadcaster like France 24 and Radio France. And by the way, the name has not been fixed yet.
Okay, we'll have a scoop later then. What about this question about instant messaging or other apps that you have to produce content for? Maybe Simon.
Well, I think it's Washington Post that has an editorial board that produce only for Snapchat and nothing else. And so I think Paul was talking about pioneers and getting arrows in the back, etc. And I think these areas are the wild, wild west of content production right now. And that's scary in a way, but it also means that there are huge territories up for grabs for the people who can manage it well. So it's exciting areas.
Bill?
Yeah, I think for us it's more, those are marketing outlets, not necessarily, creating content specifically for them. So they kind of leverage what may already be being done in a marketing aspect. So, but it's an interesting challenge.
And by the way, let me follow up on applications such as live streaming, because this is a huge turn when it comes to live television. The New York Post was mentioning a couple of days ago that Twitter and Facebook were on the verge of actually trying to buy some TV rights when it comes to live streaming on those kind of applications. Is it the proclaimed death of live television?
No, it's on the contrary. It's live is becoming ubiquitous and everywhere. You will have more and more live content. We are professional of live content, as you are. It's just we will use these tools. We will use them because they are quite useful to be on this platform where the audience is. No, it's not. It's a good news.
Live television versus live streaming on platforms?
I think it's a good thing. Obviously, if I'm not at home and I want to be able to see something, live events are great to be able to have with you. So there's always challenges. We're not in the live business, but certainly as a consumer, you know, being able to take advantage of live events when you're away from home is great.
So the content consumer loves it. What about the producer?
Absolutely. We're actually working on a couple of live streaming concepts right now, so I won't pitch them now. That would be that'd be rude.
We'll have time for that later. So, second question that was actually asked on the mobile app: what is the monetization model for VR and 360 content? Do you guys have a clue?
No, again, we are. I mean, 360 we just began the experiment this. We did it for Roland Garros last year and a live VR on some matches. It was not easy. There is no monetization. But the good thing, what we are just seeing that. People are paying for to try VR in some theater in the US, in Europe, and you can make pay for if the quality increase, if you know how to deal with. But we are really at the beginning of the story. We are before let's say if you compare to the phone or the portable phone or the cellular phone, we are now before the iPhone movement. You know, we haven't found it yet.
Final question on monetization of VR and 360.
I have all the solutions. You can meet me outside afterwards. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think if we had the answers to that one, we would be somewhere else selling that. But yeah, I think that's definitely a challenge to be conquered.
Okay, just final question to wrap it up. What should we bear in mind in terms of innovation? One innovation that is going to keep you busy over the next, 2 years, 3 years?
How to make sense and how to use data.
We have smart data over there. Simon?
I'm looking forward to getting into VR more. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, since we've rolled out, you know, UHD and HDR, and obviously it's not ubiquitous, but it's getting there. That VR is probably the next sort of frontier challenge that we all have, and trying to figure out how we actually make money in that realm.
Actually, you have questions, they have answers, so you can definitely meet those futurologists at the speakers room. It's just outside, actually, the Esterel, this very room in here. Thank you so much. I think you deserve some applause. You've been in the hot seat for over 30 minutes. And thank you for the question on the mobile app. I'll give you a 5 minutes break, and when we're back, we'll meet 3 startups that are about to disrupt your business model. So stay tuned.